Hello again and welcome everybody to another episode of the Coco and Adults podcast. We're real people doing real reviews. And now, what are we talking about this week, Coco? Oh, by the way, I'm not Coco.
Yeah, I was going to say, not Coco.
Definitely. Well, you could have done that. It would have been an interesting transition.
I'm not Dalt.
And tell us, not Dalts, what's going on this week on the podcast?
So this week we are talking about the hot off the presses Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 6, Chapter 14, The Tragedy.
See, this is why you do that, because I couldn't remember all those details.
I know, numbers aren't my thing, so I had to look that up before we start. I was like, wait, I think it's Chapter 14? I don't know.
Just don't ask me, to add them or multiply them or anything like that.
Right. We actually, as soon as the screen popped up saying Chapter 14, The Tragedy, I was like, oh, hell no, I can't deal with tragedy today. Mm-hmm. Like, today is the anniversary of something that is very good, but is sad because it's no longer happening. And I was like, no, I can't deal with tragedy. So be warned, people who might be in a not happy state of mind, this might not be the episode for you.
Although it turned out to be not completely tragic.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been a lot worse.
Could have been a lot worse.
So, Mando and Baby Yoda, a.k.a. Grogu, which is still horrible, find their way to the planet with the ruined temple thingy that Baby Yoda is supposed to reach out with the Force at, and hopefully some other Jedi will find him and train him. Which
looked like a leaning Stonehenge.
Yeah, it totally did. But so Mando puts him on the rock, but then Boba Fett and Ming-Na Wen, who showed up in the first season as a sharpshooter who was left for dead, they show up because Boba Fett wants his armor back, which Mando got from Cobb Vanth in the We Shall Not Speak of It first episode of season 2.
So it actually was relevant, that first episode.
Yeah. So a little bit of a scuff ensues, but they end up teaming up because as they're yelling at each other, stormtroopers show up to kidnap Baby Yoda, so they have to team up to take out the stormtroopers. But spoiler alert, Moff Gideon is waiting in the atmosphere in his Imperial cruiser and sends down some Iron Man-looking dark troopers into the Leaning Stonehenge temple. They steal Baby Yoda. They take him on the Imperial cruiser. And last shot of the episode, Baby Yoda is in shackles on the Imperial cruiser, and Moff Gideon is like laughing like a villain.
So it raises a question to me: is it why did Moff Gideon not send in the dark stormtroopers in the first place?
I don't know.
Rather than sacrifice 2 troop loads of bad shooting white stormtroopers, he's like, let's just get the 4 guys down there, the Iron Man guys, and maybe that would be a 10-minute episode. I don't know. Maybe that's why they did it. And then also when they landed far away so that there was actually some tension where they had to walk closely to Baby Yoda. Yeah. I never understand that in movies. It's like you land 14 miles over there and then there's a dramatic scene of the guy walking toward it. And then the hero has all this time.
Right. It's like when the villain, instead of just killing you, spends 20 minutes talking about how brilliant he is and how this was all in his plan and gives you a chance to escape. So I actually forgot. So after the Dark Troopers steal Baby Yoda, Mando teams up with Boba Fett and Ming-Na Wen because they're like, well, now we're in your debt because you allowed Boba Fett to have his armor back. So they go back to, I can't remember the name of the planet that Carl Weathers and Gina Carano are on. Mando tells Gina Carano, I need to bust this guy out of Imperial prison to help me get Baby Yoda back. And she's like, well, I'm a lieutenant with the New Republic now. I can't really help you. But then she finds out Baby Yoda's been kidnapped. So rules go out the window.
And then she looks askance.
Right.
She just turned her head just slightly.
But the last scene of the episode is still Baby Yoda in shackles.
Right.
So, Daltz, what did you think of this episode?
So now we're talking.
Right.
The last 2 episodes were the best by far of this season. And this episode and the last episode were both of quality that I was forgetting at certain times to make fun of them, to remember to make fun of them in the podcast. So the first episodes was just like, why are we doing this? And what's happening? And
it was like pulling teeth those first couple episodes.
Yeah, the frog lady, like, that's got nothing to do with nothing. And then now I'm excited because now we've got a thread. We've got the thread that no, Baby Yoda's, he's got the powers. He's sitting on the Force Rock getting blasted by the good mojo vibes, and now he's got all this power. So now we have a little bit of origin story there. We've got Boba Fett, which I always thought Boba Fett was a really cool character in the Star Wars, the original trilogy or whatever, the first New Hope or whatever it was.
I hope they explain how he managed to escape from the Sarlacc. He's supposed to still be in the Sarlacc being digested for 1,000 years, and his head does look like he went through some trauma.
Yeah.
But I hope they explain how he escaped from the Sarlacc.
Yeah. I always liked Boba Fett, and so it's good to see him back, and there's a connection, obviously, with the Mandalorian armor and everything like that. So this kind of is looping back together. And so I was impressed. I liked the action. I liked the tension. I liked the special effects. I thought the acting was a lot better. The directing was good. We saw that it was directed by Robert Rodriguez, who is known for Sin City and some other movies too. And we were talking about Rosario Dawson in the last movie, of course. So there's a connection there, or in the last episode, I should say. So I liked it. I was impressed, and I am glad that we are getting redeemed. I'm glad that we are actually getting rewarded for watching the first few episodes, because those first few episodes they could have been any science fiction series. It could have been inserted any characters. It had nothing to do with Star Wars.
Yeah, aside from Tatooine, there was no connection to Star Wars whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, they used all the characters, but it could have been interchangeable with like the Cylons from Battlestar Galactica and all that sort of stuff. So I'm glad that we're moving in the right direction. Coco, what did you think? That's more important.
OMG, I loved it. It was awesome. It was only a half hour, which I'm bummed about, because the first episode was like 55 minutes, and that was the most worthless episode of the whole season. So, but it might also be good because it was really tight.
Yeah.
Like there was no extraneous stuff. Like the action was hopping. Like it just, it was just on a high level from beginning to end. I liked that Boba Fett was back, obviously. It was great to see him in the armor, just looking like a badass, going around.
Getting stuff done,
Yeah, it was the Star Wars fan in me totally geeked out when the Slave One showed up. Like right after Mando landed on the planet and he and Baby Yoda got to the temple, he looks up in the sky and the Slave One is, going across the sky. And I was like, oh, Boba Fett is back. I was so excited. That geeked me out. And then also there was another line Boba Fett said, Mando said, like, you're a bounty hunter, and he said, like my father before me, and that echoed in, I believe, Return of the Jedi, when Luke says, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. I was like, oh, like, the Star Wars fan of me just, like, freaked out. And I'm sure if I watched, like, the Clone Wars and some of the other, like, non-main trilogy stuff, I probably would also geek out about, like, dark sabers and dark troopers and stuff, too. Like, I would have more of a background on that. Yeah, so I loved it. I thought the action was great. I don't like the kidnapping of Baby Yoda, but we had to know it was inevitable because, Giancarlo Esposito was going to get stuff done.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not going to give up until he gets his target.
Yep.
So I like Gina Carano's appearance at the very end. Like, so now she and Boba Fett are now obviously going to be in the main storyline for the next couple episodes, because now they're teaming up with Mando to get Baby Yoda back. So this is good. I feel like I said that when we reviewed the Disney trilogy, the Disney sequel trilogy of like the main movies, the middle movie, The Last Jedi, like Rian Johnson had set out to make like a subversive Star Wars movie, and I hadn't thought that he had done a good job with it. And I feel like this season of The Mandalorian is like subverting main Star Wars mythology and doing a good job at it. Like, like with Boba Fett. We've been thinking for 40 years that Boba Fett died in the Sarlacc, but now Boba Fett is back, and they need to explain that.
Right.
But, it's good. And so I feel like there's like some subversion of like Star Wars canon, but it's done in a way that fans are not mad about it, and it still feels true to the Star Wars universe. It doesn't just feel like some crap that got thrown in there.
Yeah. I think this is great because Boba Fett was one of those guys where, even though he was a bad guy and he fell into the gaping desert monster and was going to be digested for 1,000 years, like that was an interesting death and everything like that. But I was kind of, even though I'm not pro-Empire. I was kind of disappointed that he disappeared so fast.
Right.
Because he was a very interesting character, and I liked the idea of a bounty hunter. Like, that to me was more complex and more like a real situation, whereas the other parts of the Star Wars Empire or the Star Wars franchise, were that there was good versus evil all the time. Whereas a bounty hunter is kind of a shade of gray of that.
Yeah.
And so when that character was introduced, I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. Like, there's a guy who's just out there for the money. So it's the Star Wars universe is very much like the rest of the world.
Right.
that we're living in right now, is that you've got to pay for play sort of thing. And so I think that maybe Jon Favreau was picking up on that, because I'm sure I'm not the only person who thought that in the Star Wars fans. Is like, what about Boba Fett? He was a really interesting character. And then we're seeing that with The Mandalorian manifesting itself, actually, because he's a Boba Fett kind of guy with the armor and everything like that. So it was very interesting to see him come back, and I'm intrigued to see what moves forward with his character.
Yeah, Boba Fett, I know Boba Fett is like a fan favorite. Like, people freaking loved him from the original trilogy. Like, I didn't care. Like, he was fine. I could take him or leave him. Like, he didn't connect with me like on a huge level or anything, but it was really great to see him in the armor just like kicking ass in this episode. Like, it was so good. So
there was even that one scene where you gasped, where he came walking out after he was like trouncing the stormtroopers, and he walked over this, and he was all, swagger and
like, oh, that was great.
Oh, yeah, I just kicked some serious white butt.
Yeah, so this is by far, I know we say that every episode.
But that's good, though.
But this was by far the best episode of the season. I'd give it an A.
Well, the last two, I'd say, took it up a huge notch.
Definitely.
Like, the first few were just not good, and I was feeling we were wasting our time. I was trying to earn valuable relationship points. But now, the last two, I'm ready to go for the last two episodes. We've got 2 more episodes to go. We got 7 and 8 to go, and I'm ready for whatever happens. Like, I'm stoked. And we had, not to mention, Mandalorian lost his ship, and there's all sorts of things that happened in this particular episode.
Yeah, Giancarlo Esposito destroyed the Razor Crest. So that's another reason why Mando is teamed up with Boba Fett and Ming-Na Wen, because he needs to hitch a ride.
He doesn't got a ride.
Right.
Yeah, he's like, can you guys give me a ride over to the Death Star thingy?
Right, totally.
Are you going in that direction? So you give it an A. I'd give it, probably a good, I think I gave the last one 1.5 lightsabers, and I'd give this probably a 1 3/4 lightsabers. This was just a notch better than that last episode.
We are trending in the right direction, people.
We're definitely trending in the right direction.
I am freaking stoked for the next 2 episodes. Like, if they're at this level, I'm just going to, it's going to be Christmas has come early on Disney Plus, because this is just all the fan service is just amazing.
Well, and this is the way it should be, right?
Right,
like,
exactly.
This is the way. This was 33 minutes long. Like you said, it was a short one. The first episode was 55 minutes.
Ridiculous.
We had no, like, when the 55 minutes was over, we were like, phew. Now we can do stuff. Like we were chained to the couch watching that. Whereas this one was like, what? You're ending it there?
Right.
And that's exactly the way it should be. It's like the old Mark Twain quote, I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. It takes more time to make something tighter and better and shorter in this case. And I think that Robert Rodriguez and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, all the principals involved with this particular episode, I think they did a fantastic job. And the acting in the first few episodes just was cringy. And I didn't see the acting in this one. Giancarlo Esposito, when you're playing the villain, you're going to be a little bit over the top, but he's Giancarlo Esposito, so he gets a pass on that. And Gina Carano was in this very little, so
yeah, she was in it for like 60 seconds,
and she's the non-actor of the bunch,
right.
So she can maybe bring people down. And she was actually good in that one scene she was in. So I'm thinking that. We're, like you said, we're going in the right direction. And when it ended, when it went to black, we were like, oh, you got to be kidding me. I got it. Can we have the next one right now?
Right, totally.
So
Disney Plus, please, next year with season 3, if season 3 isn't delayed because of the pandemic, please just release them all at once. I will legit sit my ass on that couch and watch 8 straight hours of The Mandalorian. I'm not lying.
I have a feeling they're not going to do that because what else is there on Disney Plus right now that has this kind of anticipation?
Right, totally. I think I saw something that I think did say that The Mandalorian is by far the most streamed thing on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Like they've got some great stuff on Disney Plus, but it's all older, 101 Dalmatians and
Home
Alone and things like that the Herbie series that I binge watch all the time when you're not here.
And The Parent Trap.
Like all these things that are great watches, but we've seen them before in one shape or another. So this is the only original stuff they really have.
And this is why I give you my $75 every year Disney Plus for The Mandalorian. So please keep it at this level. Jon Favreau, I'm begging you. Please, please make sure every episode is like this one, because this was amazeballs.
Yeah, this is good. I give it a high mark for sure.
Rock and roll.
So that's going to be it for our quick hit. We're going to keep going, obviously, with the Mandalorian series. We'll hit number 7 and 8 in the next 2 episodes.
And we'll probably have another review or 2 in there as well. So keep your eye on your feed for all of our episodes.
And thanks for joining us, listener. Thanks for liking us and sharing us. And thanks for going to cocoanddulce.com and contributing to the fund to keep the podcast alive, because we've really appreciated the contributions we've gotten so far.
So until next time, I'm not Dulce.
And I'm not Coco.